Hey guys, Drifter here. Today we have a special treat for you on the channel. I was invited by Dr. Vlisides to speak at Grand Valley State University once again as a part of his class on creativity, internet culture, and a dozen different things. So I get a chance to return to college, but not as a student or the ever underemployed graduate student. Instead, I actually get to be presenting as a guest speaker. So today, the professor and the students are going to walk me through a series of questions and a short presentation, and then we're going to turn things around and take questions from the YouTube chat. Actually, I'm pointing the wrong way. The chat's going to be this way on my video. And then I'm going to let you, the chat, ask the students and the professor questions, and I hope that they are ready to answer your always interesting questions. So without further ado, Professor, it's up to you.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being here. I've been a longtime fan, and it's a huge honor to get your perspective. This is my class, Lib 310, on creativity. Hi, everybody. Yeah. And we're here at Grand Valley State University in Grand Rapids, Michigan. The class is about creativity, and we focus on a whole bunch of things. But right now, we're focused on video games and sort of the gamification of pedagogy and of life and how to make, in Jane McGonigal's terms, life a little bit super better. And so we'll talk about that. And but we also have a lot of questions about your creative process. And I've always found it interesting how you combine video games and learning. And that's something we care a lot about as well. You talk about political stuff and race stuff and really hot topics in culture. And you combine that with a market that doesn't often talk about those things. So I find that fascinating. And I think my students have a lot of good questions about that. So if you're ready, we'll jump into some of the questions.
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Okay, cool. All right, so the first one, do you think that video games can be used for more than entertainment? And what about as a strategy for living longer, happier, or healthy lives?
Well, video games can obviously be used for more than entertainment in the same way that a book can, or a movie can, or a piece of art. The meaning is what you ascribe to it, or beauty in the eye of the beholder. For some people, a movie is just a movie, and then for others, it's a life-changing cathartic kind of experience that changes their perspective on the world. And it can even be something silly like the dumbest, silliest B movie might be a joke to everybody except for that one guy. It can be very, very important to. And it's the same for video games. Now, video games are viewed as a lesser art form, and in many cases that's true, but I think the line is blurring. You have beautiful games like Mirror's Edge. They have, I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with Spec Ops: The Line. It was a very generic shooter game. I'm in totally not Iraq, shooting totally not Iraqis and stuff. Except right. Instead of blowing up people consequence-free, when you call in your airstrike, when you blow people out of a building, you're actually killing civilians, and you have to walk past the dead bodies, and you have to see the mother screaming and holding the baby. And the gameplay was very generic, but the game really hammered home the horrors of war for a whole generation that had only ever seen it on CNN or in a video game. So it was really eye-opening for a lot of them, and I think that can be, something like that can be more than just a game.
Wow, that's a great answer. Huh. So do you think that games like Call of Duty, that often remove the women and the children from the war fields and the battlefields, do you think that carries a different value then in terms of realism or violence?
On average, yes, the values will be different, but again, it depends on the person. It's all about the individual experience, and that's just how art in general works. And there have been a few Call of Duty games where it was a little bit more in your face, like the No Russian, where you shoot all civilians in the airport, and I think MW3 had the bomb going off, and Black Ops was especially so because they had real world. People are laughing. Y'all reading the chat back there?
Yeah.
Oh boy. Yeah. I'm out. Cringe. Spec Ops: The Line. Yeah, but it depends on the individual person. Is the short answer there? I know it's not the best, but it's what it is.
That's fair. Well, since we have people leaving the chat, this is sort of a relevant question. How do you see video games working in the lives of your subscribers? Do you see it as a deep impact, a positive one, or sometimes negative?
Mostly deep and mostly positive. Video games are a social experience these days. It's not the 1980s where only the nerds go to the arcade, which is never really true. Almost everybody did to begin with. But I read a very interesting study about how students this was, I think, grade school, but kids that were too poor to afford video games were socially ostracized because they could not socially connect with their fellow classmates, because one of the things that all the kids like to do is go play games together, be that Call of Duty, Battlefield, Skylanders is really popular, or Pokemon. But instead of going out and riding bikes around and getting in trouble, or I don't know, doing all the things that kids used to do before the internet, they play games together socially, and that can have a very deep impact. And in many cases, it's a positive one. It's fun. It doesn't hurt anybody. It lets them work out a lot of issues there in the game space. Like the 12-year-olds in GTA aren't out causing real problems. The guy in the back is hitting a dab over there. All right. Yeah, Michael. Yeah, they're somebody dab, please. That's how I see it. And of course, there's negative impacts. Some people get addicted to video games. Some kids get bad ideas. But I think that is just definitely a minority of players.
So what do you think is the key then to making video games a positive impact rather than something that's addicting, or taking some of the narratives that are bluntly violent and turning those into positive experiences? Is it just community? Is it just that you do it with friends? Is it that you consume the media so that you are more cultured in a way of talking about things with other people?
I think you've got it right there. It is about the community and about the person. And I would like to say that there's no good way to make a video game or any piece of art or media more or less impactful. I'm more on the side of that art can be art just for the sake of being, and I would defend everything from the most straightforward moral story or a value lesson to the just purposefully obscene and absurd, like Human Centipede. That's how freedom of speech works. And when you start going down the trail of every video game should have a great moral purpose, you'll lose a lot. Not everything has to be moral or make sense or even improve. Right. Some games are designed to be scary or depressing, and some people need that balance in their lives.
Yeah, that's a great perspective. Do you see yourself contributing to a larger conversation about video games, or do you think that your goal is to fulfill a niche? And if it is contributing to a larger conversation about games, what do you think that is? And what's the goal of your commentary? What do you believe in?
Wow, you hit me with a lot of very deep questions all at once.
I do that.
You've really got me thinking now. I'm trying to self-evaluate and wonder if my channel is a niche or if I'm part of a bigger conversation. And to be honest with you, I truly don't know. It might even be inappropriate to define yourself because you don't have the outside perspective.
True.
What do you think? Honestly, I don't know on this one.
Yeah, I think that you are part of a larger conversation about video games being more than leisure activity, more than just child's play, but actually hard play. You invest in the details. I think the way that you study and break down the details of a game is a sort of calculated knowledge base that's important to a niche group of people, but it's also really significant to the larger conversation of how games can matter. When I understand how like a stock works as an attachment on a gun, there's only a select group of people who know that, but that inside knowledge is part of the game logic that makes me feel even more part of the apparatus of the community of gamers. Yeah, sorry, I heard something. But on the other hand, I asked my students about this. I showed them some videos, and they had never seen your channel. And a lot of their responses off the first base were, yeah, I don't see value in that because I've never played the game. It doesn't make any sense whether, Juggernaut or whatever is better because I don't care about that. I see the value in how much depth there is, and I could see that as part of a community, but they weren't convinced that it had a larger conversation to it. So, yeah.
Some videos do and some don't.
Right.
I think much earlier this year, I did a video on transgendered rights and the bathroom issue. I see some people smiling, and because you're thinking, the blonde girl in the front smiling because she's thinking, what in the hell does this have to do with video games, right?
No, I love it. Like, if you can, I love that passionate about that issue. So I'm really passionate about that issue. So the fact that you can incorporate it into video games is new to me. That's why I'm smiling.
Yeah, so a lot of things like the Juggernaut versus stopping power, if you don't play Call of Duty, you don't care about, right?
Right.
But I made this video and I had the COD commentary and I talked about it and I tried to explain that there's more, that there's the rights issues, there's the culture issues, and then there's crazy tax issues, because I'm in Texas, right? And my
Yeah.
state gave up like $15 billion of federal funding so that we can have different bathrooms, which is just beyond stupid, right? Yeah, I can see. That was my expression too, rolling my eyes. I couldn't believe it. And I put that wrapped in like a COD package. But the video was one of my most successful ones for the whole year, and it spread way beyond Call of Duty. And I had people that don't even watch Call of Duty or give a damn about video games watching it just for the opinion,
Right.
which was shocking to me because it was really designed for a gamer audience. I think I'm
Right.
getting a little off track.
No, but no, you're not. I think that that's the larger commentary, though. I mean, you're using a medium that the majority of the world's population now engages on a daily basis. That's used in education and corporate motivation, and you're using it in a way to talk about real issues and issues that don't often get talked about over mediums that are healthy and fun. So I think you engage hard topics with sort of this hard fun mentality, hard play, which is something I care about. So that I like that. Yeah, that's why I'm a
Gotcha.
subscriber. Yeah. Yeah. All right, we'll move on. What is your creative process, and how do you motivate yourself to create when you feel a blockage?
Creative process is difficult. Oftentimes I just like, a lot of videos are more straightforward. For the guides, you see in-depth, right? There's 40 guns, well, that's 40 videos, 40 breakdowns. You'll see topics
Right.
of this versus that. For the other videos, it just happens to be about something that I've read or something that I feel is important. Occasionally, I'll get an idea while I'm just out in traffic, just something you run into in everyday life. It's kind of, everybody has these thoughts in their head, like if I were president, or I wonder why somebody did this, or
Right.
I'm sure a lot of your students, you see blank faces in the classroom because they're just not, they're just off in
Right.
outer space, just thinking about something, anything else that's important to them. And that's what you want to talk about, whatever's important to you, whatever is on your mind at the time, because it allows you to get more creative and put more of your heart into the video than just, picking topics out of the hat. And Reddit is surprisingly inspirational. I sit on Reddit way more than I should, and I see all these crazy articles and facts and figures flying around, and it's very easy to pick one and research more of it.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
But as for blockage, that's a nightmare.
Yeah.
Because when I make a content essentially every day, I've been a little bit off schedule lately because of said blockage. This is sounding like a constipation commercial, but that's not easy. It's just like writer's block or anything else, but sometimes you just have to suck it up and do it, I guess. I actually have a board. You can't see it. It's behind you over here. Or I just have a list of ideas written down, and whenever I'm struggling, it's like, all right, let's just go to the board and pick one. Let's do it.
Very cool. Yeah, we talk a lot about the creative process in here, and we've interviewed a lot of different types of leaders and creators, and that's a continuing question, whether it's an individual thing, a collective thing, and how do you stimulate that every day? And you have to do this every day, so that's got to be hard. Yeah.
Yes, it's like the soap opera production schedule. They're cranking out 5 hours of content every week. It's the same kind of thing here.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll move on to a new sort of question, and it's a little bit long-winded, so I'll try to power through it. So
I'm
the
ready.
basic question is, what is your thought on virtual reality? And what I mean by that is a two-part question. I think there's two sort of extreme opposing views, and this is something I've been researching. On the one hand, I think my hope and the sort of idealistic view is that virtual reality has the power to transcend class barriers, racial barriers, any sort of real world barrier that we face in education and society. It could be transcended in that it's possibly the new avant-garde medium of everyone can access this new reality. Everybody can go to high school in the most magnificent place as you plug into it. Your locker could open up to any castle you dream of. And everybody, whether you're in inner city Toledo or the fancy parts of Grand Rapids, could go to the pyramids of Egypt on Monday morning when they plug in through, something like Google Earth if it got really good. And I find that potential fascinating and interesting. But I also see, on the other hand, all these new agencies popping up where they're making Mercedes-Benz commercials in virtual reality, and you feel the like winding roads and the perfect fast car and the golden sunny day and the birds chirping, and it's so deeply real for you that you think, why have I never bought this before? And that's sort of a scary manipulation of the virtual world. And I wonder where you see, I mean, Call of Duty had this sort of experiment in the new game where you could do a virtual reality mission, which I haven't played, so I'd love your feedback. But also, do you see that there's somewhere in the middle, realistically, that virtual reality exists?
That is a very long-winded question, and I think that you, being a professor and given your education level and what you do, are about 5 steps ahead of the rest of the world. The rest of us are just trying to get their buddies to try a VR headset for the first time ever to prove that it works, and you're over here worried about societal impacts and changing the way we live our daily lives, and the technology is far from ready for that. But I will say now, I do not believe that virtual reality is a joke. Many people in my chat believe that it's just a gimmick. It's like the Wiimote. It's like the Kinect. It's going to die soon. And that's not the case at all. Almost anybody that's tried a VR headset will tell you they're amazing. So any of you in the chat or in the class, if you get a chance to try a VR headset, be it the most expensive HTC Vive or the absolute cheapest Samsung Gear, just try it out just as a proof of concept, and you'll see that it works. And then imagine that technology like 10 years from now, 5 years from now. You also see a lot of money flowing into it, and like something like 50% of new game studios are VR studios, which is crazy, all the indie games. But anyway, back on track.
Yeah.
What you're talking about reminds me a lot of the comic book Surrogates. Not the movie with Bruce Willis, which was kind of terrible, but the actual comic book was much, much better. And it had a lot of that, like people would go to work, but they would have avatars, right? Like they would change their gender or race or size. And it had this impact on society where a lot of people ended up colorblind in a sense because they didn't know what the person really was behind their robot, so it really didn't matter. And VR, you can do that because you can change your avatar to look however you want. If you I think the end result of this, if you want to look at Second Life as an example, everybody's going to be a hot, sexy beefcake or a bimbo or an alien with 3 things on it or Harry Potter or something. You know, they're going to go crazy with it. I actually have this fear for VR that in the future it's actually going to make us a little bit less social, that we'll want to go out less and hang out in the VR space more. And I already have people that used to work on COD. They're trying to develop VR business meetings that capture body language, among other things, to try and so that you can do virtual work and virtual meetings without having to pay for flights and stuff. And it is going to change the world, and it is a little bit of Pandora's box. You have Elon Musk talking about we're probably not in base reality, because if you scale up virtual reality, you can make it indistinguishable from real reality and all these very, very, very complicated things. The short answer is, let me try to summarize this. I do think some companies are going to abuse these experiences. Absolutely. It could end up like the, what was that 1993 movie, End of Days, last time, where people were, they had these like bootleg VR experiences of rape and torture and stuff like that you could go through. And I'm getting off track. That this question is too wide for me. I could talk about this for hours, but it is going to change the world eventually. If not now, if not 5, 10, 15 years, the technology is ready, and once we perfect it, it's going to change everything.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Do you think, when we've talked a lot about the positive value of video games so far for you has been the way that it can bring people together, the community of it. Do you think that virtual worlds make human connection more real than playing on a server on a screen?
They can, in a sense. I actually see the question list you have for me right here. You're talking about people could go visit the Gaza Strip. Imagine how people's view of politics would change if, let's say, you put a VR recording device on a child and just let him walk down the Gaza Strip, and you could have that experience to see what it's really like to be Palestinian in Gaza through their eyes, or vice versa, what it's like to be in Israel or anywhere in the world. I think it's going to create a lot more empathy when you can really see things through people's eyes.
But it could also have the effect, like the critique of popular news media, that you make a spectacle out of the violence so that you become numb to seeing it repeatedly, so you don't take as much action to
Oh,
seeing war or famine, you
yeah,
know?
that's already happening, so that's
Yeah,
also entirely possible. Only
right.
the human race will decide.
Fair enough. How do you balance the line of satire and constructive feedback when you critique video games?
That is very difficult because sarcasm does not go very well on the internet.
Hmm,
Sarcasm is much more useful in interpersonal communications where full body language, smells, sounds, and intonations
right.
are perfectly captured, not on video or on microphone. And it's especially bad via text. I mean, in the class, raise your hand if you've sent something sarcastic to somebody via text and they took it very literally. Yeah, so you all know that sarcasm is poorly, and it's not tremendously better in the YouTube space.
Okay.
So, satire I have to use sparingly, and it has to be very direct, very on the nose, very hard to miss, is the way to go with satire. And constructive feedback is the preferred way to go. You want to be constructive, logical, straightforward. And if you're doing satire, you want to follow it with some kind of constructive feedback. I think that's the best way to go.
Great. Thank you. All right, another kind of serious one. I can tell you love those. How do you see our roles differently, you and I? Many critique modern academia as a place of edutainment, education and entertainment. So I'm an edutainer, you know,
Oh boy.
and I feel that pressure at times. And you're primarily an entertainer with some educational value. Do you think we serve a similar mission at times?
We shouldn't. We really shouldn't be. Kind of
Tell
like
me why.
if you ever watched the Colbert Report or John Oliver, whatever, the Last Week Tonight, people get their news from those shows, like legitimately their news. But those people's jobs is not to make news. They're
Right.
comedians first, and everything else is second. That's how we're like on opposite sides of a. I don't want to even use the coin analogy here because it makes it seem like we're doing the same thing. Your job is to educate your students, or to, at worst, influence their values, give them just a little push in the right direction, even if they
Right.
don't remember anything from your class. And all the entertainment is something that goes on aside from
Right.
that to keep them interested.
Right.
My job, if I even have one technically, is just to be entertaining. I could
Right.
sit here and do like some people and bathe in a hot tub full of hot sauce, and that's just as entertaining as COD videos to
Right.
some people. All the
Right.
educational benefits are additional or on top.
Hmm.
I am not required or beholden to even be honest. I could lie about literally everything and I would still be just as entertaining, kind of like some of those
Hmm.
drama sites and stuff. So I really don't think that we should be in the same field. I have chosen to take on the responsibility of trying to run a more educational channel to teach more, be helpful, uplifting, all those sort of good things. But
Hmm.
it's optional, whereas yours really shouldn't be optional.
Okay. Hmm. I like that. Yeah. Hmm. Hmm. That just gives me things to think about. You know,
Yeah.
I share the same value in critique, but I feel that pressure as well with the entertainment side of things. So I'm just
That's right. You have
curious.
to keep your students interested, and
Right.
traditional formal education in universities is important. It's been getting pooped on recently because of the cost of attending versus the relatively low-paying jobs that students get to start with, which I'm sure all of you are ready for. It's going to be great because yay, economy.
Yeah.
But no, traditional education is very important, and it's something I
Hmm.
would recommend. I went all the way through graduate school and stuff, so, and even though I don't use those degrees straightforward like in my job, the experience is still very important to me.
Right. So I like this idea, and I just want to call out the sort of binary, maybe dichotomy that in education, entertainment is sort of a perversion. It shouldn't exist. We can critique that very easily and say, no, this place is for entertainment. But in entertainment, education is not as much of a perversion. It's okay. Or should we say that the two are the same, that in entertainment, adding educational value is a perversion somehow? You shouldn't abuse entertainment that way to be educational.
Well, it can be abused that way. Think about as kids. I'm sure you watched educational cartoons that were super boring, and that was just punishing to you. Just think about some of those terrible cartoons you saw as a kid trying to teach you something, and they were just the worst things ever. Please put on the 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo. I can't stand this.
Right.
That is a perversion of entertainment. But I don't want you to think that I think, or that the rest of the world thinks, that entertainment and education is a perversion, because making education fun or entertaining ascribes value to it, personal value. Instead of just working this, you're working your heart as well. And the little bit of entertainment might cause a student to really fall in love with whatever type of material or project or thing that it is going on. And I'm sure Red Shirt guy here with the laptop is very entertained. He's literally getting thousands of comments. But no, it's important, because if it's 100% dry education, like think back to the 1900s schoolhouses where they wore the black robes and they crack you with knuckles if you didn't, if you didn't pay attention, that isn't going to inspire passion as much as something that's just a little bit more fun. And I don't know what your take on your classes are, but the ones that I got the most out of were classes where I got the big picture ideas, or to see how something could be fun or useful in or during the class, and not necessarily the ones where I just got 1,000 facts drilled into my head that weren't super useful.
Right. Yeah. And what I call that in my sort of methodology is the difference between storytelling and information. So I think that's sort of what you do well. That's what I like about video game commentary, is it tells a story. It doesn't just give me information. Edutainment is sort of a pun, but the whole idea of giving the students a story gives them something, a toolkit they can take outside of the classroom, rather than information they can get anywhere. And I don't want to just give information. So, especially in the creative process, it's impossible to give anybody inspiration to create without talking about how you are imbued in the things that you create as well. So understanding yourself helps you create things that are more significant to the world. So, all right, so last question, and then we can open this up maybe to some chat, or if you have questions for us as well. Okay. How do you see, I know you focus on the Call of Duty series, so I want to talk about that. How do you see it evolving ideologically? Do you think that the new game continues this narrative of American exceptionalism against this homogenous besieging enemy, or do you think it's taken a new form somehow?
Oh man, you're putting me on the spot here. I thought you were going to get me to talk about supply drops of all things, but we'll put that aside.
Do that
stuff.
Next.
Oh boy. I actually think it is a little bit more of the American exceptionalism thing, especially because I went to Infinity Ward and they talked about they wanted to tell a really traditional type of war story, and they actually modeled the story off of some World War II and Vietnam kind of experiences. Because I thought, when I first saw the bad guys, they're the frontier defense, the settlement defense front. They're like the frontier planets, and they're ganging up to take on Earth. I thought it was going to be like Firefly, where Earth is just like a bunch of greedy rich people and they're hoarding all the resources. But they decided, instead of going that route to have two equally valid sides, they decided to make the bad guys just generically bad and evil, just to have a very straightforward villain for you to defeat in order to tell a traditional war story. So I do think that continues more along the lines of the American exceptionalism, hoorah, Space Marines sort of deal. They didn't want to make it complicated, and they made that choice on purpose.
Do they do that on purpose because it sells more? Because ideology like that is easy to consume by the Western consumer?
I believe that asking a question like that you are already beyond the purposes of the writers, which were mostly military veterans and game developers. And I promise you they are not concerned with ideologies.
Doesn't mean we shouldn't be, though, as a consumer. Right. Okay, let's open this up to the chat, and if you have any questions for us.
Okay, I'm gonna, guys in the chat, I know that you have a lot of questions for everybody here, but I'm actually got a couple of questions for the class here. Does your university have safe spaces?
Yes, they have one.
Okay.
How do you know the blue arch in the library? Yeah. You mean spaces where you can talk about, you can have soapbox preachers and you're not allowed to kick them out?
No, like I'm sure you've seen, at least I see on my media inputs, the traditional non-discriminatory safe spaces for trans students or students of color, or these areas where you can freely express ideas without the fear of rejection, those kind of safe spaces.
Yeah, there's a structure on Grand Valley split into 2 campuses. We're downtown, and then there's a campus out in the cornfields, and they have a big blue arch, which is sort of the logo of Grand Valley, and that's the space in which that happens. Yeah.
Gotcha. So do you or the students support the creation of these kind of spaces? Do you view them as an extension of First Amendment rights spaces, or a perversion of First Amendment rights?
Mm. Come up here.
I was just say our university, as a liberal arts college, we do value the right to actually be able to do that. So personally, I think it's cool.
Speak really loud. Yeah.
As far as other people, I'm not exactly sure. So.
Okay.
Could you hear that okay? Is that loud enough?
Okay. Everybody can hear it? Nobody else? Oh, we got a couple. All right.
Are you like defining safe spaces as like a place where you're allowed to say whatever you want to say, or a place where you are like protected by like negative things others might say?
The second one, the protective safe spaces, because that's, again, on my feeds, that's something that I read about a lot, and I was not in college when that was a thing, so I'm not trying to be a dick about it. I'm just trying to get like legit feedback here.
So I would say like the thing on campus is more so the first one, not the latter.
Right.
It's not like a place where it's a place where anybody's gonna say whatever they want, not where you're gonna be protected from like what others say.
Mm.
Yeah, I've like been walking. I've walked to class before to like Mackinac, and you have to walk by the bridge, and like there'll be, I don't know like what they are, but they're calling any girl that walks by a whore, and she's a slut, and she probably has some sort of STD and other very crude things.
I think I had the same people at my university. I trolled them super hard back in the day. It's actually on YouTube, but we have a girl with glasses raised her hand.
I know that like that area is like the free speech zone where you can go and talk about or protest anything, but then we do have like the Women's Center and the LGBTQ Center where you can go and like get counseling, or I don't know if Grand Valley has one, but I know that some other Michigan universities have like study rooms for women only and study rooms for men only where you can go and have that privacy.
Really?
Yeah.
We actually do.
That I didn't know. Okay. That I did not know. Interesting.
Yeah.
All right, guys. The chat's going a little bit crazy here. Let's open it up, and we'll take a few questions from the chat. But first things first, Mr. Redshirt, you're going to have to hit a dab, because I've seen that about 10,000 times. There we go. There we go. All right. All right, so we have we have Redshirt and Michael in the back looking at the chat. James, do you want me to take the questions, or do you want your students to pick the questions they want to answer?
They're coming up so fast.
I don't think, yeah, they said the questions are coming up too fast to decipher, so go ahead and...
Okay.
You have...
I told them to post on Twitter using the hashtag #RedShirtGuy.
Yeah, post on Twitter saying hashtag #RedShirtGuy.
Extra credit for that. It's creative.
The only one was, what kind of shampoo does RedShirtGuy use?
You have to answer now. It's live.
Land and sail.
I had a good question that went by really fast. It says, do you, as the students, feel that your college is pigeonholing you by forcing you to go through one specialized degree, or do you think it allows you to become a specialist? Like, is your education too wide or too narrow, or just fine?
Yeah, we're a liberal arts college, so we're actually not
Loud.
Being a liberal arts college, like we have the ability to do that. We have specialized courses and degrees, but as a liberal studies major, I actually have the ability to seek a focus in anything I want. So you can do that as well.
And they also at our university like encourage you to take classes that are outside of your major, so you're not like specifically focused in one spot.
Personally, I think it also comes down to the type of degree that you you choose. Sometimes, depending on the intensity of study, you sometimes have to omit certain classes and experiences. So I think Grand Valley does a great job at opening us up to new experiences through these classes. That's one of the reasons why I'm here in this creativity class. But I don't know, it really comes down to the individual student and what they want to pursue.
Yeah, Grand Valley has a lot of really great opportunities. There are a lot of like overseas studies and study abroad. You can do community service through Africa. There's a lot of really great stuff.
Gotcha. Okay, then I'm going to add a follow-up question to this one. If it's a liberal arts university, I'm assuming a lot of you are getting liberal arts degrees, and that's often made fun of. I know a lot of you know where this is going. What job do you... I'm going to follow up with a very uplifting story, I promise. What job are you all planning to get with your degrees, if you have one planned or lined up? Anybody?
Cruise line industry on Carnival Cruise Lines.
Gotcha. All right, so you're going to be a sea captain.
No, I just want to work on a cruise ship and travel. So
We missed one?
What'd you say, bro?
Juvenile probation.
Juvenile probation. Very difficult job, but good luck, and I hope that you are able to help some kids out.
Thank you.
I'm a communications major, and I would really love to be a copywriter when I'm older. I don't know for what or where, but just that job title interests me.
Gotcha. They want to know what red shirt guy is going to do for a living.
I'm hoping to be an athletic trainer.
Gotcha. We got one in the back raising the hand.
Well, this is a suggestion from the chat. They want to turn red shirt guy into a meme.
Oh, God.
I actually have a question for Beard way in the back. What are you planning?
I'm a criminal justice major. I'm going to start the police academy next summer.
Awesome, but I meant other Beard way in the back.
Oh. I'm actually just completing my degree. I already work in insurance. So I'm just continuing in education, and it's fun to take classes. Keep my mind open.
Good, it's a very good habit. Okay, so I'll tell you a funny story about a liberal arts degree. I may have said this the last time we were here, hopefully didn't. But I had a professor when I got my MBA. He was a statistics professor in the business department, but his degree was in pure mathematical statistics. Brilliant man, well-published, well-read, really overqualified even to be teaching graduate students. And he told a story about how he's got his PhD in physics and all these glorious degrees, and this job opened up in New York at a marketing research firm, and they needed a person to oversee their entire statistics department for all their statisticians, for all their research and everything. And he's like, this is perfect for me. I have the perfect qualifications here, and I don't want to be a professor anymore. So he applied to the job and was shocked when his sister got the job instead of him, when his sister only had a bachelor's degree in like general liberal arts, and his head almost exploded. And he's like, so hold up, I've got a PhD in applied statistics and like 20 years of research, and you hired my sister that's got a bachelor's in the liberal arts. And he talked to them, and what they said is that they didn't want too much groupthink in the statistics department, and they didn't want a statistics-minded boss running the department because they would just focus on the math and lose focus of the goal of all the math. So they decided to hire an outsider and put them in charge in order to actually create a little bit of conflict and help keep everything on track and on focus. So a little bit of an interesting story. Let's go back to the chat. There are a lot of people here wanting to know your thoughts on the election. I know that's a very controversial. We heard something.
Yeah, splitting split the campus or divide.
Conquer and divide.
They really split your campus up that bad?
Yeah, pretty bad. We have people protesting downtown and
Right now, yeah.
I think it's ridiculous.
Right now, so you was Michigan a battleground state?
It was.
I did not know. Oh, I do. Yeah, I do remember that because I did the election night live stream. I remember I was sitting there like, well, if Hillary doesn't win Michigan, she's pretty much screwed, right?
Right.
And it came down to just a few votes. So then, my question is for the students here, why do you think Donald Trump won? Because all of the projections leading into the election And all of the polling data and everything was massively in Hillary Clinton's favor, and this may literally be one of the biggest election comebacks of all time. Why do you think it is that Donald Trump actually won? We got a hand raised in the back.
Are you asking why, like, the polling was wrong, or like the projections were wrong, or why he like won?
Either or. Why the projections were so different than the reality, or why do you think he won when a lot of people regarded him as a joke for so long?
They said that a lot of the projections are based off like social media and stuff. So a lot of the people that were necessarily like on social media either like didn't vote or and like voted or put their name in for Hillary, or you know what I mean. They didn't vote, but they like checked the Hillary box on all like the projection tools, or there just wasn't a lot of like people that voted for Trump that were doing the projections, and like that's where they said a lot of the projections are based off of, like off Facebook and like Twitter and stuff like that.
Gotcha. We had another hand raise.
I read some like reports that talked about how the like the projections and stuff were a lot of times from people that were very open about who they wanted, but as far as liking Trump, that is still, I think, was not. It was still kind of something a lot of people held secret in our society, because he represented a lot of things, that beliefs and values that people never talked about until he became president. So those people that voted for him did not feel comfortable expressing that. So when the polling came around, they maybe didn't answer or didn't put themselves out there for fear of rejection, or just fear of like that stigma. That's just from what I've read and talked about in classes.
Very interesting, because that was my own personal feeling. I felt that he had a lot of supporters that were very afraid of being outspoken for fear of ridicule. But I have a question for the whole class. We can answer with hand raises. How many of you voted? Wow, that is awesome for a college class, because typically young people don't vote. Just a very small percentage of young people vote. Usually it's the baby boomers. We have a hand raised way in the back here. Can you stand up? I can't see anything.
Hi. So my personal experience with voting as a college student, we voted in like the smaller town that part of the campus is located on, and they had sectioned off the town so that the entire college campus and all of the off-campus apartments were voting in the smallest area in the entire building. Like they had them all in one area, and there was a 2-hour wait for the college kids to vote. But since I didn't live in the specific off-campus housing, it took me 10 minutes. And just the people working there were really upset about the whole situation and how it was really rigged against the college students trying to come in and vote and do their civic duty.
It is. It was the very same way in my college where I lived for a long time, but it's for a surprising reason. It's actually not anything to do with the national elections or really the state elections, but the local ones, because a lot of states and cities pass laws, college towns, to prevent students from classifying as permanent residents. Because as a student, many of you are probably not a permanent resident of the area. Some are, some are not. But what they don't want is, like, I went to a town, the town itself might have had like 15,000 people in it, and then you had 35,000 college students. If they all counted as permanent residents, then, and if they all voted, then the town would be completely run by the college. They would vote like for the homecoming king or whatever to be in the city council. Or if you had a popular movement like the hippies in the 60s, you could have like a socialist city government, which the people, like the old folks in the city that actually live there and care, would hate, but wouldn't change the students' lives at all. So those kinds of things, you're right, they're completely rigged and set up against the students. I had to struggle to vote in my hometown as well, but it's so that they don't blow up local elections and just do really crazy things with the city governance. Okay, so let's go back to the chat. Oh man, what is going on in the chat? The chat is nothing but red shirt and glasses girl all the way.
I have a question.
All right, we've got a question here.
All right.
Yeah.
How do the students feel about self-censorship in America? For example, those who decide not to learn about the Holocaust, do you feel they're blinding their views, or are they protecting themselves? That was in the chat.
Wait, hold up. They're choosing not to learn about the Holocaust? Am I missing? Is that an option? Do you just get to like, oh, history? This for nerds.
That was like the most.
That's what the question was.
I am unfamiliar. Is anybody here in the class familiar with this optional learning?
No.
I don't know if this is a newer thing.
Maybe they're saying not to learn from. Like, we're not choosing to learn from those past experiences and making the same mistakes.
They're probably talking about like state textbook rigging.
Yeah.
Here's a good question. As a creativity, or as I'm gonna change it a little bit, but it's kind of directed towards you. It says, as a creativity university, where do you have to educate people and help people be creative? Do you think education diminishes creativity? I like the last part where it goes, do you think education diminishes creativity?
Yeah, I do. I sort of fall into the Sir Ken Robinson school that the university and education is a industrial concept, and we sort of put people through the manufacturing process and try to create these shaped minds that are shaped in consistent ways. Even the authority structure that I still stand in front of the classroom and they have to sit and be obedient, and even the sort of repressive state apparatus that they believe the grade that I give them. They believe that what I say is worth 90 out of 100 is worth 90 out of 100 outside of the classroom too. When I teach creativity, I have to be sensitive that everybody here has a different major. I have to be sensitive that some people have a broad spectrum and some have a single spectrum. And I also want to be sensitive with the way that I grade and the way that my assignments are structured, that I challenge all of those types of minds, but also in a way that creates a sense of value within the classroom, not really concerning myself with the structure outside of it. That's a really difficult thing to do. So what I end up trying to do is I created a formula of what I think creativity equals. Sort of like instead of an IQ, you have a creativity Q, a quotient that determines your creative abilities. And we focus on that equation, and we go through sections of leadership training, cultural training, intelligence training, et cetera. We look at corporate creativity, but also practical creativity, local and global. With the basic idea for me is to give them a toolkit where even when I'm not around, they can still go out and figure this stuff for themselves. They can have creative emotional responses, creative behavioral responses, and creative practical responses. So instead of writing papers, for example, their first assignment, even though they're not web developers, is to create a public blog or website. And their second assignment is to create a video where they have to look at ideology in video games. And then the last assignment ties this all together with their own career focus of creativity. So,
gotcha. The chat wants me to tell you that you look like Ryan Reynolds. Just thought you should know.
Eat your heart out.
And and don't you find that somewhat paradoxical to try to teach? Think about this: teach creativity. Whereas creativity is almost always thought of as both spontaneous and somewhat arbitrary. Because like you're saying that this could be creative, but this isn't, and this work is and isn't. And yet you're trying to teach that in a formal structure and add points and creativity quotients to it and other stuff. Who was the strange man in the blue hat that just leaned over to look at me wearing a Rorschach jacket over there? The blonde girl. Oh, okay. But
I acknowledge that sort of hypocrisy. But I also want to point out that that's only the sort of philosophical trend of creativity. That's looking at it as a lowbrow art. It's a creative thing. An object is something that people decide whether it has value or not. So we wrestle with that question. But I also am intentional about creating a sort of process for every day looking at your own personal self as the creator. So there's a different process there. And then we also talked to a couple CEOs and businesses looking at like local corporate creativity, how to practically be creative. And I think corporate creativity is not on a whim, I just show up at a desk and create. I think there is a process. There's a group think, as you said the word before. There's a way of collectively creating that has value outside of the arbitrary, I'm going to have you show up every day and draw with crayons. There's something much more calculated about creativity.
So then what do you think? I'm going to throw this one out to you. it is a slightly stereotyped question steeped in movies and silly blogs and stuff. What do you think about the companies that have these like creative spaces? It's a lot of tech companies. You walk in and everybody's sitting on beanbags and the walls are pink and it's like, yeah, we've got goats in the office and just stuff. Do you think that's helpful, or is that just unnecessary distraction?
We actually, our first book was Ed Catmull's book, Creativity Inc., looking at Pixar, and they're sort of an icon for these creative spaces and the way that they build their offices. And I think it's a brilliant idea. I think that it allows us to create spaces in which we find value and the comfort to have a sense of sort of stability and structure. If we're going to be there 40 plus hours a week, I want to have a space where I feel sort of at home in a place that inspires me. But having a common creative space is a little different because you are intentionally creating a culture of creativity when you create a space that has a certain type of furniture. You know, Hayworth or Steelcase makes a business out of this. And you also have, if you have a coffee shop creative culture, that's different than having, I don't know, an underground sort of cellar looking type of place, or something that's elevated with bamboo floors overlooking the ocean like you might see in Silicon Valley. So the space has a very significant impact, and aesthetics in general, on how we perceive the world, how we're inspired, and that's a corporate thing as well. But even in the practical terms, when I want to create something, I have to go to a space that's creative for me. It's not a beanbag, so if my business determined that's how I had to create every day, I'd probably hate my beanbag just as much as my office chair at some point. But having the freedom to move about and not have a static office or cubicle that I'm stuck in, that makes space matter.
Good. I have one comment and then a question for the class. Did you guys know that Pixar actually pays its gay employees more? And you're going to say this is crazy and reverse discrimination, but in their state, at least for, I'm not sure if it's current, but at the time, they were not allowed to provide insurance benefits to the spouse. Like if a normal, let's say, woman works at Pixar, her husband can get the Pixar insurance as well, just like most people do when they work. You insure the whole family through the company. And being Pixar Disney, it was really nice, right? Well, in their state, they were not legally allowed to do that, so they just paid the gay employees the same amount, but in bonus cash, so that they could spend it there or elsewhere if they wanted to. So they retained a lot of employees that way. And we have a question from the chat, and this is to anybody that wants to answer in the class. Do you think Harambe died for no reason? Did they have to shoot Harambe? We have one in the back.
Yeah, R.I.P. Harambe.
How does that connect with gay employees?
No, I had the one in my head because we were talking about creative spaces and Pixar, and then I'm also reading the chat, so I see Harambe, so I put that in queue behind the other one. It's a bit of a bad habit. It asking me to get all over the place, but actually screwed up my most recent interview doing that. I was interviewing one of the creators of COD 4, and I was trying to ask him questions at the same pace the chat was going. I just ended up interrupting him a lot, which was very rude. We have a question from a sponsor by the name of Rogue. He says, what do you all think of the integration of technology into the human body, not just in VR, but there is a future coming with actual cybernetic implants of sorts, not like next week, but what do you think it's going to be like when we are able to actually augment our body? Nothing? Nobody? Apple Update's going to be a real pain in the ass, I know. All right, I think we're...
That's a good point, actually, yeah. If your left eye didn't work because it's updating.
Yeah, software update. Yep. Enough about Harambe. Okay, I think we're kind of winding down with the serious questions. Unless your class had any more bonus questions for me or anything that you wanted to say, I think I'm going to go ahead and start winding down here.
Yeah, I got one more question, and then I'll say something, and then we'll go.
All right.
All right, so we did a project we played like a game, and we had to find like the ideologies in the game. And so I did in Black Ops 2, Sticks and Stones. So just kind of like refer back to that in when I asked the questions, I guess, to that game. So what do you think of the comparison of the game creators to the government? And then I have like questions after that if you want me to like
explain more. What do you?
You got me confused.
Okay, so what do you think of the comparison of the game creators to the government? So like, as in like the government, how the government like regulates everything, how like the game creators, when they made the game, they regulate everything in sticks and stones so that everything is, you know, like when you start off in the game, you have like 3 weapons, everybody has 3 weapons, it's free for all. You know what I'm saying? Like.
Okay. I think that's overall a good thing. It's a strange comparison. I get where you're going. But a game is a construct in a sense, and if you don't regulate it, which is similar to creating it in this case, it's just pure chaos. Just absolute chaos. Like it's a game is a construct that we all play with set rules, and if there are no rules, then there is no game. Is that making any sense?
Oh yeah.
You've lost me. I'm sorry, you've lost me.
Well,
do you
go ahead.
Do you think you can make a comparison to like what you said about the game being whatever you just said it being? If you're going to compare that to like the country as a whole, where like there's, you get what I'm saying, where it's a construct that you need to have like regulations in, or else there's absolute chaos.
There are analogies of that. Yes, if there's no regulations, it's absolute chaos. But in the different sense, the government exists only to add more order to a world that's already here. I mean, we have our rules and laws, which are mostly physical ones, laws of gravity, stuff like that. But a game with no rules falls apart. It crumbles. It's not a whole. The game creators aren't like setting rules for us like thou shalt not steal and thou shalt not misbehave, as much as they are just making sure that their little experience flows and functions.
All right, so I'll wrap this up with one more question and then a comment. The last question is for you, Drifter. How have you seen growth in yourself since you started this whole YouTube creative process?
Let's see. A more confident person, a little bit more outgoing. It's allowed me to meet and interact with a lot of people, so I can learn from their experiences. I think I've actually moved slightly more left after talking to everybody on the planet about different stuff. And it has allowed me to communicate emotions more clearly and effectively, not only through voice and other things. And I know my voice is very monotone, right? It's fairly simple, straightforward. We're going to take a darker turn here, so get ready for it.
Go.
Grew up in a situation as a kid, not so great of an environment, and I was always at risk of getting my ass beat or creating some kind of chaos or strange arbitrary punishments for a lot of things, and all of my family members hated each other. Nobody got along, and they all had secrets that they kept from each other, but they all spent time with me because I was always in the middle of everything. So at a very young age, I needed to learn how to lie and to lie effectively, and I was terrible at it. So when I was about 7 years old, I got this idea that if I changed my voice to be flat and monotone, to have no emotion and to answer everything flat all the way through, it makes it super easy to lie. So you can lie about dad's girlfriend, you can lie about mom's drugs, you can lie about all this kind of stuff to whoever, whatever. You answer the same way, whether it's the truth or the lie. Don't show emotion, don't be excited. Yay, thank you for the birthday present. No, grandfather didn't hit grandmother today. Things like that. Very easy to do. Did it for years and years and years, and the voice completely stuck. You can go back to my old videos, and I sound like a robot. And a lot of my friends thought that I was crazy or I didn't have a soul or anything like that because the habit stuck, and I had no practice communicating like a normal human being. So doing this on YouTube, I learned very quickly that I need to change my voice. I need to learn how to convey emotion and articulate myself better. And I had to practice it a lot. I had to practice it for a long time, try again and again and again. And I know I'm not perfect at it now, but I promise you, if you go back to some of my super old videos, the difference is tremendous. And that's something that I'm very grateful for because it's also beneficial to me at an interpersonal level.
Wow. You're a testament of creative growth then. So thank you. I appreciate you sharing that and wholehearted living. That's great. Thank you so much for your time. This has been really beneficial to my perspective, and I hope my students just join me in saying thank you for being here.
Oh, anytime. Thank you. But I have one more request to end the stream. I want the whole class to dab, and we're going to end it.
Oh, no.
All right, guys. So if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe. And class, we're going to hit our dab on 3, 2, 1, dab.
I don't want to do it. No. Thank you, Drifter.